here. And let me just start off by, there you go. Good to see you, Don. Somebody's already excited to see you. Your master knows your classic black and gray, so that's good stuff. Hey, let me introduce myself. I'm Josh Hodson-Pillar. I am CEO of Juno, and we are excited that you guys found your way on here. We're pumped to have you. And these are some of my good friends and gentlemen that I just spend time ideating with and challenging each other. And finally, after a few of our offline conversations, we said, boy, we should take this online and just allow everybody to kind of peer in and even at times challenge us. So a little background on me. I own multiple software companies in different categories. And when COVID happened, a lot of our clients said, hey, we need to go virtual and live. And so we built Juno. And these two gentlemen have been a big part of just helping me think and understand the category. And so I'm excited to have them join us and have a great time. Don, would you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Josh. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Don Neal. I'm the founder of a company called 360 Live Media. We're a Washington, D.C.-based firm that specializes in nonprofits. And we help them use their events, conferences, and trade shows to accelerate your business objectives. And obviously, we're now working in the hybrid environment like all of you are. So we were born as a live event company, and we've been doing virtual and hybrid now for the last 6 months. And I'm excited to spend this time with all of you and my two friends here, Rob and Josh.
Yeah, Rob, introduce yourself, brother.
Sure, of course. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rob Lee, and I'm Chief Marketing and Communications Officer with ASAE, which, for those not in the space, American Association of Executives. I think I'm happy to be here. These two guys, love these guys. We have a lot of great conversations and looking forward to this one today. It's a topic that's on the minds of many people, including ours. So just looking forward to a great conversation. Want to hear any input or questions? And as Josh said up front, challenge us. That's all good. We want to get better. So that's the whole point of today. So thank you. Happy to be here.
Very cool. Well, hey, for those of you that are on, we are going to have a conversation today on a profitability mindset. And I love this concept. Don brought it up the other day in our conversation. And I think this is so important in not just our business, but our lives. Let me give you a little story to start this off that I think will help us think. And then I'm going to ask Don to even explain it out a little bit more. But we're up here at our Idaho home. And my son said this morning, I'm trying to figure out if he wanted to go to the movies or the water park. They've got $5 movies up here, but they've got a $23 water park. And I said to him, hey, I'm happy for you to do either, but you're going to have to put some skin in the game if you want to go to the water park because one's 5, one's 23. And he said, oh, I don't want to spend my money. I'm going to go to the movie. And I said, what do you want to go to? So I want to go to the water park, but I don't want to put my own money in. And I said, why do you live with a mindset of scarcity? Why do you think you can't make more money? What if you instead said, Dad, I'd love to go to the water park. What are some ways that I can make some more money so that I can pay for that? See, he didn't have a profitability mindset. He had a scarcity mindset. It happened this morning, right before this call. And I think for a lot of us that are in our personal and our professional lives, we're going, I want to do the bare minimum because I have these only little bits left. Instead of saying, how can I change my mindset? How can I see bigger and think bigger and have a profitability mindset versus scarcity mindset? And Don shared with us in our previous conversations that he really wanted to talk about how do we change our minds from thinking scarcity to profitability. And I just thought that little story this morning was right in line with human nature is to hold back instead of think big. And so Don, talk to us a little bit about just what does it mean structurally wise to have a profitability mindset, and then let's work through that together.
Yeah, I love that story, Josh. Good way to kick it off. So one thing I'll say to all of you that are watching, most of you work for nonprofits, and you've probably heard some of these glib quips in the past, but no money, no mission. Many of you joined associations because you care about the mission, you're passionate about the audience, the sector, and you have a nonprofit mindset. And what we're suggesting today is that, being a nonprofit is a tax status, not a business strategy. Okay? And what I'd love for you to think about for the next 55 minutes is think like a for-profit organization and that you're trying to make as much bottom line operating income as you possibly can. And then you can use it for whatever mission-oriented outcome you want. Subsidizing dues, subsidizing event attendance, doing scholarships, offering grants to students. There's so many great things that you can do with the profit, but you have to adopt a profitability mindset in this era, because most of you right now are suffering declines in your operating revenue and your income. So here's the reality of where we are today. The reason that virtual events never really took off is because they weren't great and they didn't make money. They just weren't that great. They were a weak substitute to a live, in-person, human, face-to-face, interactive, engaging environment. And today, we're all thrust into a world where virtual events and hybrid events are the coin of the realm. And we all have to get better and better and better at making this medium work. That's number one. More importantly, we have to make them profitable. And today, just to share a couple of statistics, about 80% of association events are being offered free or very, very low cost. And the idea with that was that we'll get a lot of attendees, and then we can monetize that audience for exhibitors and sponsors and underwriters. And the truth is, most exhibitors and sponsors today are very unhappy with their interaction that they're getting from a lot of virtual events, because they're not getting the kind of connection, they're not meeting the right people, and we're striving to really create a better economic model. The other thing I'll share with you, when you offer your event free or no charge, there's about a 50% drop off in the attendees who sign up and who attend, because people value what they pay for. And if you don't have skin in the game, Josh, your ability to say, hey, I'm just not going to show up if something better comes along. So we really want your attendees to have skin in the game. And then the last thing I'll say is that about 90% of the events that we are seeing today are having a dramatic reduction in the operating income by as much as 80%. So an event that might have done $10 million last year, a big trade show, generating a $4 million operating profit, might be generating a $400,000 operating profit today. So there's this decimation of operating income. So this profitability mindset that Josh talked about and that Rob and Josh and I have been kind of riffing on for the last couple of weeks is so critical. So it's really getting your head in the game. And I've said this to many of you that I know on this webinar. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so I'm asking all of us right now to look at your event as a for-profit commercial enterprise that has to work harder and has to make more money. That's really the bottom line.
So Don, let's expose the elephant in the room. Hey, we want you to have a profitability mindset when profits just got slashed, exhibitors aren't happy and don't want to pay. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, this mindset is rooted in reality, right? Like you just told me that everything, that the sky is falling. Now, Tony Robbins the hell out of me and get me excited. I mean, how do we, so fair, right? Like to have the crisis moment, the panic moment is real, it's fair, it's normal. If you didn't have it, you would be detached from reality. Okay, so now you've got the walls are coming in, things aren't looking great. Let's start to talk about how we shift our mind, because we can only control what we can control, right? And so one of the first things that we wanted to talk about today was understand and think about how the organization can make money. It's one of those things where we've always seen the organization make money and maybe these 3 or 4 or 5 levers. And now we're saying, wait a minute, there's new things we can pull. This is how the profitability mindset starts to look at it differently. We're not going to pull the same things we always pulled. We're going to start to pull something new. And maybe, Rob, you can talk a little bit about, as ASAE has started to get into this space, what are ways that you guys are starting to think about how you can generate revenue in a new way, in a new era?
Well, it's funny. A couple thoughts here. One being that when you start talking about what's your entry point, to this kind of mindset, right? And I think part of it is that, I'm going to apologize up front because everybody who knows, any of us knows that we are all just straight up candid and honest, and we'll just say what comes out. And it just, so just hear us. So don't kill me about this. But I want to frame it a certain way, and it's the following: that there's always been a lot of conversation about engagement. And I'll tell you that I see engagement as not mutually exclusive from profitability. It is the same thing. If you have solid engagement, if you are actually doing things on behalf of your members, on behalf of your stakeholders that they value, then you will be able to monetize that. in a way that's effective and sustainable for the organization and for the people that you serve. And I think sometimes the entry point, it's a little bit uncomfortable to talk about it from the framework of how are we going to make money at it, because oftentimes when we have that conversation started there, then there's a little bias that creeps into it. Well, we're about mission. I get it. We are absolutely about mission. So this is Rob's opinion here, just hear me out. That I think that orientation up front about how we enter that conversation is critically important, because again, I don't see those two concepts or variables as being separate. Those are the same thing when done well. So that's one piece of that I just immediately want to just speak to a little bit.
That's cool. And then, Don, I'd love to hear, we got a first question already. Hey guys, I like the idea of thinking about events for a for-profit mindset. Are there any metrics behind this train of thought? So when we start to say, hey, I'm going to be a profitability mindset when I talk about this. So Rob, you've kind of talked about engagement. That's the first one. To your point, if people are engaged, money is going to follow. And if money follows, then mission can expand, right? So bottom line, I had one of our clients the other day, we were talking, they're a big radio station. They have 20 million active listeners and they're launching Juno. And they said, well, how much is this going to cost if we get 1 million people live on your platform? And I said to him, if you get 1 million human beings live at one time on my platform, you don't even need to worry about how much it's going to cost you. I mean, if you pull that off, so to your point, I mean, engagement, money will always follow. But Don, what do you think about when you think about those metrics of like, hey, this is where I'm going to apply that profitable mindset, and this is how it's going to push itself out?
Well, I think the metrics today are what they've always been. We use the 6 R's. And if you haven't heard this before, jot it down. Reach, retention, relevance, reputation, revenue, and ROI. And the dependent variable is always relevance. And this is exactly what Rob and Josh are saying. If you're relevant, if you're engaging, and you're attracting an audience, the money follows. So it's really strategy first, profitability mindset second. You've got to build a relevant, compelling model. There's another little acronym I'm going to throw out. I'm actually going to jot it down. It's an equation that I've always used, and is V equals Q over P. I don't know if you can see that, but V equals Q over P. Value is a function of quality over price. Mm-hmm. And when you're thinking about quality today in a virtual digital environment, it's different than quality was in the live environment. Trying to take a live event and pour it through a virtual filter, it doesn't work. You have to start with a different mindset of the product you're selling, because you're trying to deliver a new kind of value. You're a media producer today. You're not an event designer.
Right there's what I wanted to talk about, Don, because that was our second question. I loved you brought this up the other day. And I think somebody on Don's team is probably on here. And if they are, will you guys put up the 6 R's in the chat box so everybody can see them as well?
Hey, Josh, good. I want to throw out another metric as well, because I love what Don was saying. I want to build on that. Yeah, so just something real quick. And this is, my favorite metrics are the following. That being, I love looking at, margin management kind of orientation. So, we look at this from a 4 quadrants perspective. So placing all of your products and services in those 4 quadrants and understanding the margin that they actually create. And then, that's how you begin to evaluate the efficacy of any of those products. So the 4 quadrants for us would be break even, which is an obvious one, cost plus, experimental, and subsidized. Guess what? In a properly balanced portfolio, you can't have everything in the same space, and you certainly don't want everything in a subsidized. But the experimental, the break even and the cost plus begin to pay for other aspects of that portfolio, and so that's part of that orientation, because some of this is, behaviorally, the data is there. The question is, how do you navigate that sometimes from a political standpoint? How do you navigate that with regards to their audiences that are really enjoying particular products and services? Let's have that conversation. Let's have it in the construct of this is what's this is what's creating value, and this is what's taking away from value on a macro scale. And then that's a much more productive conversation. I just want to throw that out there because I think that's really important.
Yeah. Hey, let's lean into a little bit this more. Can you lean in a little bit more the cost plus a bit more? Talk a little bit more about the cost plus. Peter had the question about that.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay? Because something just happened. Okay. Yeah. So, cost plus. So simply that, whatever your costs are, then you've got to be covering those costs, and then you've got some percentage on top of that. That's really what I mean by it. So that's the prime spot to be in with regards to products that are really not only driving the engagement, which they'd almost have to be by default in order to be in that category, but they're also driving positive business value back into the organization. And those are the ones that you want to repeat. And those are the ones that you always want to build toward. And everything else should be feeding into that cost plus category, because that's what's going to allow you to sustain what you want to do for your members. So when your members are asking you to do more and more things on a daily basis, which is happening for all of us, how do you afford to do that? You got to have that stuff in that cost plus.
So let me give an example of how I do this. So I'm a software entrepreneur. We've started and exited companies, and we've started multiple, but I've always self-funded. Only until recently did we start to take on investors for some extra projects that we thought were worth investing in. But I always explain to people, because I want to give like a real practical example of how you might think about a profitability mindset for those listening. Super practical. You guys play poker? You guys ever play poker? Just with buds, maybe once or twice a year, whatever it might be. I'm going to give away my poker secret, so you'll always know how to beat me. I'm not a high risk poker player. I'm not a let's hope I make it all up on the river. Let's all go in. It's just not me. I look at those first cards and I go, would I bet on these if this is all I had? And in my world, I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of self-funded folks, and I watch a lot of them go out and go, I got one high card, I'm going to go all in. That is a profitability mindset equation that some people feel really comfortable with. And they go, if I've got one shot in a million, I'm going to go all in. I'm kind of a two of a kind guy. If I look at my hand and I got two of a kind and they look high cards, that's when I start to get into I'm going to start to put profit in on this. I'm going to start to bet on this. And then there's some people that are just frozen. And it seems like they just, unless they get the perfect hand, they're not willing to play at all. And I think for everybody listening, you're going to fall in these camps of you're going to be high risk, calculated risk, or no risk. And what you're going to find is each one of those, it's hard to say how the story is going to end, but you might want to look at yourself and go, am I a high risk person? Am I a calculated risk person? Or am I no risk person? If you're a no risk person, you're in real trouble in this season of reality. You've got to begin to move into a calculated risk. And if you're a high risk person, you better be working with your quadrants and really make sure that you're not betting the whole farm, but you're looking at areas of saying, hey, on this quadrant, we can risk because we've got some stability here. And so from just a practical way of doing some self-evaluation, I think it might help you to kind of go, okay, where am I? Do I need to move the needle a little bit more, but do I need to make sure I'm being protective over here so that I can get into being more risk appropriate during this time and season? So if we ever play poker and you see me, you guys know what my cards are.
That's a great, I think, example that we can all relate to. And I want to talk about risk for a second, because I think associations by default are naturally risk averse. They're trying to support an industry. They've got a lot of constituents and they can't go all in on one thing or another. There's a good risk formula. It's risk equals the threat times the vulnerability. Risk equals the threat times your vulnerability. The threat has never been higher than it is right now for the event industry. Okay? We're facing an existential threat in the events industry. The question is, how vulnerable are you in this high threat, high risk environment? And the best thing I think you can do, to Josh's point, is take some calculated risks, move from the low risk or no risk category into the calculated risk, because I think what you're going to find, the greatest risk today is doing nothing, because you become more vulnerable because there are for-profit competitive events. The investment community has started something called a vulture fund. Part of a venture fund. This is a vulture fund. They're coming in and they're swooping up companies or associations that are vulnerable, or merging associations that are vulnerable to independent survival. So there's a lot of things I think that all of you can do to mitigate your vulnerability. You can't do much about the threat. None of us really can at the moment, but we can muscle up and get stronger. And this profitability mindset is something that if you're watching this, you were drawn to this topic, and you're probably going to be the champion within your organization to go back and talk to your board and your leadership and say, you know what? We're vulnerable because we've got a scarcity mentality like Josh talked about. We have to start playing more offense, and we have to make our virtual events more engaging. We have to improve the quality and the programming to be more interactive TV and QVC like versus a 8-hour, top to bottom, 4 days in a row kind of slugfest, and we have to create new inventory for industry partners and sponsors to invest in so that they can get an ROI. And this is a virtuous cycle. So I'm really optimistic for many of you in your second virtual event, which you're going to be having in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months, that it's going to be more profitable and more engaging because you learned a lot from your first event. If you're having your first virtual event, you can learn from all the virtual events that have happened in the last 4 months and really begin to mitigate your vulnerability, because there's a lot of lessons learned by the people watching this webinar and from people like Rob and our company and Josh. So I hope you tap into the best practices that we're all learning right now.
Let me, I still want to hold off to getting into the media mindset, because I think it's really worth like circling on that for a little bit. So let me ask this question. If you guys were going to advise anybody listening, like let's say somebody raised their hand right now and said, I'm a low risk, person. I'm worried. The threat scares the crud out of me. But guys, what's one area if you had to bet your last $5 on one hand, what would you put it on right now and say I would invest and take a risk in what?
Do you want to go first, Robert?
Yeah, I'll jump out there with something. I think that there's a bit of an overlay to what we just talked about, and that being, we think about this from a change management or an organizational development point of view. Almost any successful organization is going to be, conservative by definition if they've been successful, right? And so I think that's just something that I always kind of embrace and understand as I move into answering the kind of question, Josh, that you just asked. And the way I might frame that right now is that, I look at this from what's happened outside of our spaces and what's happening from a behavioral standpoint inside of our spaces. What are the audience development cues that we already see? We see, it's hard to drive, solid price points from a registration standpoint. It just is. And it doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's hard to do. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to try and do it and maximize it, but it's still going to be a challenge. So if I were answering the question, what do I look into? I really look at this as trying to drive different types of sponsored value. Honestly, that's where I would focus. That's where I would start to lay my bets, because I'm going to presume for a moment that if the organization is doing a good job in engaging its stakeholders and members, then you kind of know how to do that. And you certainly should be able to figure out how to deliver that differently in a different channel, i.e. virtual. The part that's probably less well developed is in that virtual space, how do you create the kinds of opportunities that sponsors are really looking for? Because their opportunities from face-to-face don't translate so well all the time in virtual. So that's where I would really kind of dive in.
And that's what Matthew just asked, how do you deliver those ROIs and networking opportunities that are typical of an in-person event? And I'll answer that after I want Don to kind of, he was asking that for you as well. So you can answer that, but you can also say, Don, you got $5 and you got one hand. What do those cards look like? What are you betting on?
So I'm going to build off of what Rob said. I think in the old days, back in February, you could get 40% of your total event revenue from registration and 60% from industry partners and sponsors. Now you're lucky to get 5 or 10% of your overall revenue from attendance, from attendees. So you're banking basically 95% of your revenue is going to come from the industry. The good news is industry sponsors and exhibitors and underwriters need access to your audience.
That's right.
You need access. They've got to stay in business, and the way they're going to stay in business is they're going to interact with your members in a more engaging way. And the good news is virtual events have a real advantage. They take all the waste, inefficiency, and friction out of a traditional trade show or commercial environment. And I only have to talk to the people that I want to talk to. And so if I had my $5 to invest, I would get on the phone and I would call every industry partner I had ever worked with. And I'd say, tell me what's working for you right now in this virtual environment, and how can my next virtual event meet your needs? Do you want one-on-one hosted buyer opportunities? Do you want a virtual focus group? Do you want virtual product testing? Do you want product placement? Do you want fireside chats? Tell me what's working for you, and I'm going to make that available. And you tell me the criteria of the people you want to talk to. I need senior level decision makers in IT in the southeastern part of the country who buy these kinds of products. Go to your database, pull those people, and say, I've got 116 of those people. Yep. How many would you like to meet? It's $2,000 a meeting. I'm going to broker the meeting. Are you interested? How many would you like? Mm-hmm. That's the way, guys, that we're going to have to get there. It may sound difficult or challenging. You may not have the resources, but that's really the way you're going to start to get on this path to profitability, is by adopting a selling what they are buying. Yep. You're going to sell what the industry needs, and then you're going to make it available to them in a virtual way that's good for your attendees, good for the industry, and good for you as an organizer. So I'm super bullish on that. I'm seeing that working. And for the record, this has been working for 30 years in commercial event environments. This is not a new idea. Dreamforce and Cisco Live and SAP Sapphire, and go down the list of all the great commercial events. They've been doing this for years and years and years. Now it's our turn. This is nonprofits' turn to step up and take a page from the commercial environment and really start to exploit it. And by the way, there's no risk in it because it's already been proven to work. This is not a new strategy, guys.
I want to say one thing to that, and there's a couple more questions that came up that I want to answer a little bit about some stuff that we're learning on Juno. But I think a profitability mindset starts with, I have something that you need and want. And I think people feel a little awkward sometimes saying that, especially when you're a mission organization. Like I can tell you as a for-profit software company.
There you go.
Oh, was I cutting out?
No, you're back.
Okay. I think I have something that you want is so important. And it's easy to forget that mindset that I've got something that you want. And in a mission mindset, you can be, oh, I don't want to hold that over anybody. But that's what a profitability mindset says, is I have something that you want. And what we've found with Juno, some of the things you talked about of the drop-offs and the different things, if you onboard people right, you can get the user data that they need, even people you didn't even know you had. Rob, you had 14,000 people show up to your last event. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
How many were at your last physical event?
Yeah, the last that's more than double the usual ASAE annual meeting. So,
and I bet you there was a whole lot of people that showed up there that you didn't even know.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly. And it's a tremendous opportunity. I want to stack something on what we were just talking about, if I may, and that is, that when you start talking about aligning, trying to fit using the data in order to help, create the sponsor engagement that you're seeking. So think of this like as content hotspots. Where are the places, the data is going to tell you exactly where those 14,000 people are going. The sessions, exactly where they are throughout the course of the day. So you start looking at that and you say, okay, here's where they are. Now, what sponsors do I have out there that are interested in these types of topics? And then I'm going to go and have a conversation with some of those sponsors and say, hey, this is what, so now I'm coming back to what Donna just said, but I'm just stacking it a little bit with regards to, here's the behavior, here's the data, here's how we can actually maximize this opportunity for everybody. And I think that's again, that profitability mindset and just kind of the orientation around it.
Well, here's the fun thing too, you can do a lot of that in real time. Like I know for our platform, we're working with one client that's got 280 different sessions over 4 days, but our product is trending those for us. They're showing us which ones are hot. And if you actually could begin to work with your sponsors of saying, hey, we're going to allow you to sponsor the trending events throughout those 4 days in real time. So in other words, you get somebody going, hey, you're going to sponsor an event and we have no idea if it's going to be hot or not. What if we could go back and say, hey, you've already committed to sponsoring the top 5 trending events, and we can guarantee you your brand is going to be in front of those events. To the level you're going even further, we can get you in front of the events that make sense for your brand. Okay. So real-time data, and then using a platform that's flexible that allows you to react quickly, that's something you could have never done in a physical event. And to your point, you had double the people, all these new people, all this new data. I've got something you need. We've got more data than we've ever had. We've got more people. Like last time you sponsored an event, it was for 4,000 or 5,000 people. But what if you could sponsor an event for 15,000? And then how do we fix the problem of the drop off, right, Rob or Don? Because if people are dropping off, but that's where, triggered platforms help, where all of a sudden somebody wants to talk to you, get back on the platform, so real-time breakout rooms where one of the things Juno does that I think is really cool. And then there's a couple other questions here that are so good I want to get to, but we can find people that you want to meet. And so let's say all of a sudden you're watching a session and you decide to make lunch and you're off. And all of a sudden we got somebody who dropped off. How do we get them back on? Because the sponsors want to know that people are on there. Well, what if all of a sudden you got an email that said, hey, Jim, this CEO of this company wants to have a 15-minute chat with you. Now you're back on the platform. You're not on Zoom, you're not on a phone call, you're back on the platform, and now we're serving you up more content you're interested in. So I think those hooks to get people back on are going to be so imperative as we think about the engagement value. There's a lot of great questions here, but Don, I know you got some stuff to add to that before we do those.
Yeah, and I want to, I think, pivot off of that and go to this question that I see in front of me now. It's a very long question. I guess all the audience can see that, Josh. Can they all see it?
Yep.
So here's my answer to that. If you look at what retail has done in the last 15 years, they moved to what's called an omni-channel environment. Mm-hmm. Brick and mortar, e-commerce, kiosk, pop-up stores, social influencers, go down the list. They've really surrounded their customers with every possible way of engaging with them from a brand standpoint. They meet the market where they are. And I think as an association, you have that same opportunity to think omni-channel. It's not, we've run to the side of the boat to do virtual, then we're going to run back and we're going to do live. That's not it. We're in a new environment. We're in an omni-channel environment. We've always been in an omni-channel environment. We just haven't had to have the virtual, digital, social experience that we now have to. So I'm very encouraged about a new event portfolio media strategy, which, Josh, we can get into in a minute. But that's really the answer to this question. It's not an either or. You have to embrace virtual and get good at it. You have to embrace social and use Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook Live and LinkedIn Live and even TikTok. You've got to embrace these channels to supplement your live event, because in 21, you're going to have a smaller live footprint. That is one thing I'm quite sure of. Vaccine, no vaccine. You're going to have small footprint experiences, and you're going to have to amplify that like a broadcast marketer or media company would do.
Right. And so let's transition to that, because Bob and Julie have both, asked the question, shouldn't virtual events be part of a much bigger strategy? How do you have it ongoing? And this is of course, we're all in agreement on this. This was Juno's whole strategy of don't do a 3-day event, do a 365-day experience. And your engagement will be 5,000x what it was. And so we've been pitching this whole concept of 365, not 3 or 4 days. And then Don, you brought it up great the other day, where you just said, which I'll let you run with, but these associations need to pivot from an association to a media company. So talk about that a little bit, because I think it's such a profitability mindset phrase and thought, and then it goes right into like all of our shared beliefs.
Well, let me just break down what a media company is. We all have heard of Fox Media and Atlantic Media and CBS. But just think of the magazine that's your favorite magazine, Cat Lovers Weekly. Okay, Cat Lovers Weekly gets people who love cats to subscribe. So there's a mutual intensity of interest around a topic. They write articles for people who love cats, and then they find advertisers who want those eyeballs to sell their products. You are in exactly the same situation. You have a intense mutual interest of people who belong to your association, whether it's astrophysicists or chemical engineers or association executives. They belong to an association because they have a common shared self-interest, A. B, your association has media channels, print, broadcast, digital, live, virtual, etc. And you have content and programming. So you have exactly the same assets that CBS and Atlantic and Cat Lovers Weekly have. So you're a media company. It's just a matter of mindset and thinking, are we going to behave like a media enterprise so that we're always playing in the background of our members' lives 365, just the way social media platforms and Netflix and Hulu and Spotify and Pandora are playing in the background of our lives, and we engage on our terms. And if your event's only a 4-day event and you've got a weekly newsletter or an annual conference, it's on your terms, not their terms. That's why virtual is here to stay, because you've got to be playing on the background, and I have to be able to tune in to WASE, ASAE whenever I want to, and there's got to be something there either on demand or live that I can participate with. That's the future, guys. Whether it happens next year or 2035, I don't know how fast it's going to happen, but it's coming to a theater near you.
I'd throw out there, just building, I love that. And we all are absolutely aligned with regards to this media orientation and what business are you really in, right? And, one thing that occurs to me is that when I start thinking about networks, let's look at network television format, actually cable. So or streaming really. So Disney Plus, Apple TV, Netflix, are they all in the same business? Do they have a fundamentally almost the same business strategy? In some respects, yes. Here's what I mean by that is that they are, and I love what Don said about we've been in an omni-channel environment forever. So a little bit of the pressure off, it's been out there forever. The pressure on is to say you can't cover all the channels. Yeah, we're not ABC. We are whatever association, whatever organization we are, but if we cover them strategically by virtue of understanding who our audience is and where the places that they are already likely congregating, and then how do we build value in that channel, then that moves you to that omni-channel strategy effectively and efficiently, and then you can build on that. So I love that overall approach. But with those 3 examples I just gave, they're in that they have a fundamentally the same kind of business strategy. What is it? They're trying to develop scale in each of those. So in each of those networks, if you will, Disney Plus, Apple TV, and Netflix, they're developing scale through a lot of content that they are collecting. They're almost content aggregators. That's one aspect of their business. What's the other aspect? Original programming. Josh and I had this conversation about products, a couple of months ago. I love his orientation. So if he ever shares that, I think it'd be fantastic for people to hear. But the point of it is that those three networks, what they're doing is they're also developing original content because that's where they're trying to build a loyalty to the audience. They want the folks to come in and say, hey, play in our space because we've got some really original, fresh content that you can't get anywhere else. And when you come to that space, we also have all this other stuff, which is then now building in the audience, and that's where the business is. So that to me is, one way to think about being in the media business. It's like, I want to, what's the original content for associations? It might be research. It might be, some type of reports, whatever it is. If you've got some of that and then you aggregate other aspects of it, now you're playing in the space in a way that you can build some audience around it. So just a way to entry point.
And let me even take what you're saying even to another space of, we talked a little bit last time, I think, about Peloton. And, my family is a big Peloton, groupie. But think about exactly what you guys are saying. Are they in the business of selling a bike? Not really. I mean, I think it was like $3,000, but that's not even their big money. They're in the business of developing media and content. And really what it is, it's about getting on a bike, choosing on demand or live the content that I want to ride to, seeing how all the people I'm connected with are doing. And then even when I travel, hotels now are picking up all these Pelotons because their people are saying, I want to be able to log in to my media channel, right? And so we think, oh, Peloton's a bike company. It's not a bike company. Media company. This is what Don's talking about. This is what's happening. They're using whatever variable they need, whether it's a bike, whether it's the mirror or the tonal, whether it's an association. All these emerging companies are realizing whatever variable I need to use just to get media out there, that's what I'm going to do. So if I need to use a freaking bike to get media, I'll use a bike. So, I mean, if a bike can create a media company, certainly an association can. It was my point in all that.
Today, I don't know if anybody caught the news. There's a famous media mogul, Summer Redstone. He died. He was 97. He died yesterday. He's the one who coined the phrase, content is king. And last time three of us got together, we talked about connection is king. And I think it's both. I think it's connection, engagement, and stickiness, which is what Peloton, that's your example. They've created a sticky relationship around something of intense mutual interest to Josh and his family. And there's content, there's routes, and there's all the things that you talked about. So I think we have to be great at connection and content. And the beautiful thing about all of you in associations, you already have this. You're walking on a beach of gold. This is right under your nose. And once the mindset shifts to a profitability mindset and a media model, you're off to the races because you've already got all the levers and buttons. This is a great opportunity for you, I think, to set yourself apart in your organization and start to do some of the things that we're talking about because it's not happening fast enough. If you're an early adopter and you're a risk taker and you're willing to try something new, grab onto this. And you know what? If the organization doesn't bite, go work for another organization. Go work for a place where you can hook yourself to a star that's going to really do something because associations are too important to society and they're too important to your career and, frankly, the millions of members they serve. You want to work for an association that's on the move and recognizes the threat and isn't going to be vulnerable for much longer. So I really hope you're inspired by some of these ideas and you do something with them. Because if you just listen to this webinar And that's somebody calling and asking Rob for a job right now.
Exactly.
Okay, Rob. Okay. So anyway, find your passion, and hopefully some of these ideas will stick. I'd love to see some more questions about things that you can actually go and implement in your organization. So if you're sitting there, thinking about what do I ask, we want to give you some counsel on this.
Yeah. We got our first question here. Rob, where do you think is the best place to find association event schedules? That's only a start, of course. Find, not find.
Yeah, a number of different options out there. I mean, certainly ASAE is one of them with regards to what's going on in our space. But I think even more broadly, actually, Josh had asked me a question the other day about, what's happening in the association media world. So, you've got organizations like CEO Update. You have organizations like AMP. It's really a collection of, there's not, to my knowledge, a universal place or one place where everybody can go. So it's a bit of a cross section. So depending on what you're looking for, I think that's kind of directing you to certain sources or outlets out there. So.
Hey, let me say one thing we talked about, guys, the other day when we were kind of prepping for this call. We talked about, and this is a tough conversation, but it goes in line a little bit, Don, with what you're saying. One thing I've learned as a software entrepreneur is we constantly have to hire young disruptors, young thinkers. And one thing that I think a profitability mindset person says is, do I have the right people on the team to get me to where I'm trying to get to? And you may be watching this and go, maybe I'm not on the right team. And you might be watching this and go, maybe I don't have the right team member. But a profitability mindset person looks at it and goes, who do I need on my team to get to where I'm trying to get to? And that was one of the things we talked about, that sometimes we have to make some tough decisions on hires. And Don, you talked about relocating. But talk a little bit real quick about that, and then we can get into some of this, revenue streams and different. But don't you think we have to kind of look at our team and go, do we have the right people to play in this new era? Or do we need to look at some new hires and some younger hires, frankly?
Here's where I land on this. I think a profitability mindset, a media mindset, and a youthful, energetic, entrepreneurial orientation is just that. It's a mindset. I don't think it's an age. I think it's somebody who embraces change, somebody who's turned on by change, and somebody who wants to make an impact, whether you're 26 or 56, it doesn't really matter. I think you can adapt and change. And if you look at some of the you look at Bill Gates. I mean, Bill Gates today is probably at the top of his game. He's no kid, right? And he's, not only does he have the resources and the intellect, but he's got the energy. You've got to have the energy, the emotional and intellectual energy to apply some of these things. So I think it's a youthful mindset, because when you're young, you tend not to be as beaten down, and you don't have as many scars, and you don't know
less to right. You don't got mortgages and college to pay for and everything.
You sort of have to live like you're dying, right? You have to, when you're 60 or 40, embrace this. I just want to go to this media company thing. Can I answer that question real quick? I don't think media companies' revenue streams are any different than associations. I think media companies make their money around three basic things. They make money around subscriptions, membership for you. They make their money around events. You've got events. And they make their money around publications. You've got publications. Yes, there's some certification and other things, but you've got about exactly the same assets and revenue streams, many of you, not all of you, as media companies do. That's how they make their money. They do events, they get subscriptions in the form of, Wall Street Journal's $500 a year, and they get advertising revenue. And you're getting advertising revenue from your industry and your exhibitors. So I see it as a really equivalent business model. So happy to, if somebody's got something they want to challenge that with, but I think it's a clear equivalent.
Let me throw something else. I want to jump back to where we just came. Then I want to jump on, John, where you went with regards to the question. So the jump back point is that I couldn't agree with you more. What I often like to talk about is that, what I'm most concerned with, with regards to growth is, how do we think about things? How do we problem solve? And people that problem solve well, that's not a generational issue. You either problem solve well or you don't. You either see barriers or you see opportunities. You remember the old analogy about thinking outside the box? And I think it was Guilford, like back in the 80s, right? And it's like, think outside the box. So the real issue is, why is there a box? Why did you assume there was a box? If I ask you a question about, probably everybody's heard this around, if there are 3 people that are driving from Miami to New York City, what's the fastest way for them to get there? I asked my question. My wife is going to kill me. I asked this question last night because I told her I might think about this. And I asked her a question. She said, well, I'd Google it. I'd figure out the most efficient route. My 10-year-old daughter, Ava, who just had her birthday yesterday, says, fly. And that was the answer, of course, because again, where's the box? Where are the barriers? So it's more a function of how you think about things, and that's what I think is most important. And I think that's where we used to have that. Don and I came from the same industry in the past, from the advertising industry. We used to call it cultural curiosity. People who are interested in what's happening in the world from a cultural standpoint, that are willing to tap into that and experience it. That's where your ideas are going to come from, because they're continually being challenged and looking for what that next thing is, because in fact they're experiencing it. So I just love that kind of orientation. I think that's important entry point as well.
Yeah, and I just want to call out 2 things. First of all, guys, thanks for pushing back on that age thing. I think it's easy to run right by that. And I just want to encourage everybody that's watching this. You're right, man. There is energy, curiosity, pushing. That's not an age thing. That's a mindset thing. So both of you guys, that was a killer thing to say and great point. And the second thing is, it's pretty clear who the Cat Lovers Weekly is, because I see him walking back there. You've exposed yourself.
There's a reason we had that.
Yeah. Any other questions? Why don't you pop them up, folks? Let us know how we can answer some of those questions too. But let me ask this question too on a profitable mindset. What is the biggest thing you guys are seeing that's getting in the way? We've kind of talked about, if I had $5, I'd bet on this. What is the thing you're seeing people get stuck on? And maybe what's an old habit that they keep drifting into that we can all be aware of and pay attention to, that blind spot? What's our blind spot, the profitability mindset?
I'll take a crack at that. I think most associations don't have performance metrics or criteria or the ambition to take on a profitability mindset. I think because of the mission orientation, it tends to cloud decisions in a way that gives people permission not to drive hard to generate profit. And the great thing about profit is it's a great metric for how well you're doing. If you're not generating a profit and people aren't buying your product, back to the value equation, value equals quality over price. If you're not increasing quality, the numerator, your price is always going to suffer. You're trying to increase quality so you can maximize price. That's how you deliver value. You're in the value delivery business if you work for an association. And I think once you take that mindset on, then all of a sudden I think you're in a position to start, challenging your boss about, should I be getting a bonus or a commission? These are difficult times. People are taking salary cuts and furloughs, and a lot of people are out of work. But I'm talking about, for those of you that are watching this and have the ability, make the investment for the next 6 or 9 months. And when things get better mid next year, you will be the one that they come to and offer a new job, a raise, a promotion, a bonus, because for the last 10 months, you've been slogging along, helping the organization make more money. In my company, I started my company 10 years ago, and I've always looked for the people who are putting in the extra time, have the intellectual curiosity, have the stamina, have the energy, and want to succeed for their family and for themselves and for our company. So now's a great time to rise to the top, because if you're watching this, you probably care about your career and the success of your organization. And the best thing you can do now is help them make money.
And I'll tell you, every company that is worth working on, they got some money. I got a call yesterday from my CTO, and he said, "Hey man, this guy, he's demanding a raise." And I said, "Well, do we need to pay him?" And he's like, "We need to pay him." And I'm like, "Then pay the man." I mean, it's, to your whole point though, Don, is the value there? Is the value there? And if the value's there, in the quality, right? Is this guy quality? Can we live without him right now? No, we cannot. I still think even in a down economy, there are people that are priceless, and those are the ones you want on your team. And to your point, man, we've got to be more courageous to hire and attract the best. and not be so lack of courage that we end up going, well, we're just an association, and so we're just lucky to have, Tim over here who has a bad attitude and shows up late every day, but at least he's willing to show up. And you're like, man, we got to be more courageous. And if you don't have that gravitas and expectations, you're not going to attract those people anyway. So I think one of the things that we've got to change the mindset is you attract, how you behave. And so why not right now just say we're the best damn association on the planet. We're creative, we're innovative, and we're looking for winners. And I think people tend to be attracted to that kind of energy and intensity.
I would I think if you want to attract great people, you have to be attractive. Mm-hmm. You have to be attractive. And I think in order for your association to be attractive, the people who work there, I think, have to believe that they are indispensable to the members they serve. And that indispensability, my first boss told me, Don, try to be indispensable to an upwardly mobile manager. That was his advice. Be indispensable to somebody who's going somewhere.
That's awesome.
And if you're working for somebody who's not going somewhere, that's not a great career strategy.
Advice, man. I'm telling my kids, that's
good. And I got that same message.
If I'm not indispensable, Josh is gunning for me, Rob is gunning for me, and I shouldn't be disappointed when one of them gets promoted and I'm working for him next month. So I'm just, I'm at a point in my life where these kinds of things, they panned out. And I've worked for some really great people, and I've worked for some others who weren't going anywhere. And I did the best I could to go work for one of those rising stars, and I did everything I could to be indispensable to them. And it wasn't about money. It was about my own sense of accomplishment.
Look, I got to throw out there, man. Real talk, real talk. I got that same message in the ad world as well. And make sure you're looking at somebody. You're aligning yourself with the upper management that is going some places, and be real clear about that and make that distinction. Josh, I loved your question up front, though. It's like, what gets in the way? I think what gets in the way is past success and the fear of future failing. That's what gets in the way. And it's scary, right? And particularly right now. So I think what we're talking about, honestly, are what are the ways that we can kind of break through that? And, as Don and Josh, you were both saying, I couldn't agree with you more. Identify the opportunity. And the truth of the matter is, the higher the risk and the greater the opportunity, sometimes the easier it is to get there. Because if it's a great opportunity, then and there's some alignment on we need to solve that problem, then there's some energy to get it done. Right. And sometimes you just got to find what those problems are and make sure that those are problems that are shared, that those are problems that focus more on what Rob wants to do or Don wants to do or Josh wants to do, but rather focuses on moving the ball down the field in a way that it can't be moved otherwise because no one's talked about moving it in that fashion. And that's stuff that's how you can get some energy behind some things. But yeah, I love that. Real talk. It's like, hey,
What Don or Rob, what you're saying is vision always inspires excellence and people to gather around. And I got to tell you guys watching this, and you guys both know this, 125 days ago, Juno didn't exist. And I went to my team and I said, guys, I think we can build a world-class 365-day platform. I'm sitting on Peloton. I mean, let's do this. And my CTO, who might still be on here, he might not be. He's like, man, you're nuts. We're not doing this. And I kind of threw a fit, and he kind of let me throw a fit, and we hung up. And 2 days later, he's like, all right, I think I figured out how to do it. Let's go. And 120 days later, we're launching with some world-class brands already. I say that just to say vision attracts people's best ideas, best energy, best effort. And I think with associations, we've got to have, a stunning vision, a stunning belief for the future. And if you do, you'll be blown away at the type of quality of thinkers and energy and effort that start to get around that. The problem is if our vision is survival, people start looking. Because in nature, nobody wants to survive. We want to thrive. And so I think what gets in the way of the mindset is a lack of a compelling vision. So then therefore you're not attracting the best in other people. And so I think you've got to look at your association and go, man, do we have a compelling vision? And if we don't, if you're working for one, like Don said, don't just go find a manager that's moving, go find a company that's moving. If so as well, because you got to be moving.
I just threw out there too, real quick. Go ahead, Don. Go ahead.
Have you ever had somebody who supervises you? Do you have a supervisor? because a supervisor better have supervision. Because if they don't have supervision, then what are you following? I'm building on your point, Josh, that working for an upwardly mobile manager or boss who has vision and energy and stamina, I'm just encouraging all of you again to think about that, because I didn't talk about the vision, I think, as clearly and well as you did. But I think that is one of the most attractive things that associations have. They have a vision to take an industry or a profession to a new place. There's nothing more powerful. That's what makes your nonprofit status and your mission orientation so powerful and compelling, and why I chose to work in the association sector. I'm drawn to the vision and the mission of your organizations. And now it's time to get into another gear, generate the income, the revenue, the operating profit, and the problem solving that Rob's talking about, and begin to put some energy behind that vision, because there's no guarantee that that vision is going to live on if your organization isn't in a financially stable place going into 21 and 22.
I'd throw out there too that I couldn't agree more. And I think so plus 500 on the vision, because that's so critically important, but also give all of us in associations a break too, from the standpoint of, I spent some time in the corporate, so Fortune 5 corporate side. And, those big organizations, guess what? They had the same daggone problems we're talking about right now.
Yep.
They absolutely did. And where you saw the innovation, where you saw the creativity was often these little pieces, corners of the organization where they had to drive a result that everybody else couldn't get to. Yep. That's where it was happening. And that's where the vision was, because the vision on the macro scale had been so kind of diluted and successful over the past. It was like, well, okay, we're good. We're going to keep driving. We're going to keep getting that 3 to 5% every year, and everybody's happy. Over there, it's like, if I don't get 20%, I'm not going to be here next year. So guess where I'm going to be most creative, innovative. So I think it's a little bit of both. And I think what we're talking about is just kind of a lot of organizational dynamics. And I loved what you're saying about what's the advantage that associations have. We have the vision baked in. It's like we have that vision. We have that vision. We're trying to say, what are we trying to do for our members? So let's use that. Let's drive that through in order to help drive us to the next possible and better place. So I love that.
Hey, we're going to, we got 3 minutes left here. And I was going to give us some final thoughts. I want us to be able to give those. Let me give my quick final thought, and then I want you guys to give your quick final thought. And then if we can grab a question, we can. Let's look at this question real quick that Stephen's right. One of the biggest challenges are people are waiting for the definition of the new normal instead of accepting abnormal. There you go. It's so true. It's time to think differently and create new empathetic engagement filled with value content. Great call, Stephen. We appreciate that leaning in, man. That's so true. Let me give you my final thought on profitability mindset, and then I want you guys to, and then I'll just finish this up as we go. But here's mine. Thought it went to 2:30. Yeah, you wish. You're not paying. So I'm just kidding. This was mine. I remember the first time I got a chance to sit at a Fortune 1000 executive room and sit with C-level players. I was giddy. My hands were sweating. I couldn't believe it. I finally made it into an executive room at that level. And I was shocked to find out that everyone in the room had no idea what they were doing. No idea. But I learned something. While they didn't know what they were doing, they weren't afraid to get in and figure it out. And what I learned was Don doesn't know what he's doing. Rob doesn't know what he's doing. Josh doesn't know what he's doing. What I think we probably have in common with one another is we're not afraid to get in and learn what we don't know and solve the problem. And my final challenge on a profitability mindset for everybody listening is don't be scared that you don't know what you're doing, because nobody does. Have the courage to get in and solve it. And you probably will solve it. You'll attract the people you need, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my final thought on profitability mindset.
Love that. I'll throw out there the following, that being that, that what I think is really important right now is that there's everybody Google this badgers and coyotes. And what it is that, it's using nature obviously as a metaphor here, but the reality is that badgers and coyotes actually attack each other. They actually eat each other. But there was a video that was circulated a few months back, and it was showing how this badger and coyote were actually hunting together, literally in the wild, for hamsters and small rodents type of thing. It was amazing. That's the way I look at our business right now. It's like, what are the relationships that you just would never think about that might lead to, if you get into them, they might lead to an output that you would never get otherwise. So that's kind of my orientation there at the moment. So
that's good.
I'm gonna end on what I think is a personal belief, and I hope a high note for you. I think there's a renaissance emerging right now for associations and for the nonprofit sector. And I think in times of adversity and in times of great threat, I think great work can be done, leaders can emerge, and I think the good organizations today have the potential to be great. And I feel like there is a vision for the next couple of years. Kate, I don't know if you're still on, but if you could post last week's blog video, if you go to 360livemedia.com, I did a video last week that describes what I think is the new normal of the hybrid future that we're going to be living in, this omni-channel world. But I'm very optimistic for every one of you that works for associations. I'm proud to work with associations. I'm always glad to be in the company of Rob and Josh, and hopefully this was a good use of everybody's time, and grateful to spend this time with all you guys.
And Julie, I stand corrected. It does say 2:30 or 12:30 down there. So color me embarrassed. You told you. Yes, you did.
Boom.
You
got it.
Exactly. This is the beauty of live interaction right here. Tell me this is an engagement. Tell me this is sponsors would do this. Guys, I got to tell you, every time I spend time with you guys, I'm a better leader. I'm a better man. I'm a better person. I am so grateful that I get to share an hour of betterment with both of you. You guys both inspire me and educate me every time, and so humbled to share time with you, and thank you. And for all of you that watched, I hope you felt encouraged and supported and challenged and loved and all the things that I think we need to thrive. And so we'll probably do this again. I think the three of us enjoyed it enough. We'll probably do it again, and we'll keep letting you know. But humbled to share time with you guys. So thank you.
Much love back at both you guys, and thanks for everybody for participating.